sir, start.
Well, my dear friends, good evening. This is going to be a discussion of Oscar Wilde, an introduction to Oscar Wilde, because I had told you about my intention to deal with Oscar Wilde's importance of being honest. We are, with this particular text, entering the 1890s. Oscar Wilde was born, I'm first giving you the bare details. Oscar Wilde was born in Dublin in 1856. He was the son of a surgeon knighted for his proficiency. His name was Sir William Wilde. And Wilde's mother was also a writer. Actually, Wilde's mother's name was Jane Francisca Wilde, a writer of Irish nationalist verse. Oscar Wilde was a very precocious child. Very, very brilliant and very handsome as well. He studied for 3 years in Trinity College, Dublin, and then he won a scholarship to Magdalen College, Oxford, where he came under the spell of Walter Pater, John Ruskin, and others. He became a brilliant classicist, and in 1878 he won the Newdigate Prize for his poem Ravenna. Now then he came back to Dublin and he actually for a time being stayed there, and then he had many career options open before him. A fellow of Magdalen College, a journalist. He could also become a part of an archaeological expedition. He ultimately became a man about the town, a dandy, a foppish fellow who was very conspicuous in his dress, very witty because he was Irish. He had a kind of a dry wit, and he was a brilliant talker and an epigrammatist. Some of the quaint epigrams that he has given us are like, divorces are made in heaven. He just twisted things. Okay, for example, we say marriages are made in heaven, he says divorces are made in heaven. Similarly, when in 1882, these are things that I am telling you so as to make you understand the kind of person Oscar Wilde was. Now, in 1882, he was going to a lecture tour of North America and Canada and the United States, And a customs official asked him, "What do you have to declare?" When you go to a foreign country, any contraband item, any item like liquor, gold, any excessive money or weapon, you have to declare that I have this thing. And then you get the permission, or else you are forced to submit it. It is confiscated. Now Oscar Wilde was asked, "What do you have to declare?" And he said, "Only my genius. Nothing but my genius." So you have to understand the kind of a person he was in order to make sense of the kind of texts he wrote later on. His first play was Vera. Second play was The Duchess of Padua. By that time, he had written and published many books of short stories. For example, Happy Prince and other stories, and then The House of Pomegranate and other stories, or Lord Sackville's Crimes and other stories, and so on and so forth. Now, he was also a critic. One of the most important critical essays of Oscar Wilde is called Pen, Paper and Poison. Okay. By this time, Oscar Wilde was already happily married. But he also developed a homosexual relationship with Alfred Douglas. And obviously, the Marquis of Queensberry, Alfred's father, didn't like this one jot. Now, at about this time, Oscar Wilde was writing such disturbing novels such as, say, The Picture of Dorian Gray. But he actually found his place, so to say, with some comedies. Lady Windermere's Fan, A Woman of No Importance, An Ideal Husband, Salome, a symbolist play that was first written in French and then was translated. But his masterpiece, his chef-d'oeuvre, his magnum opus, is considered to be Importance of Being Earnest. It was first published in 1895. Around this time, a scandal about his homosexual leanings actually became very, very pressing. He was publicly insulted by the Marquis of Queensberry, whom he sued for libel. But ultimately, he lost this case. He was prosecuted for indecency, and he was accused of being a sodomite. And from a dandy par excellence, he, in his own words, became a ruined man. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 2 years of hard labor and imprisonment. This period produced two of the most important pieces of writing. One was the Ballad of Reading Gaol, and another was a kind of a letter which was published posthumously in 1905, entitled De Profundis. Now, Oscar Wilde, after being released from prison, couldn't stay foot in England. So he went to France, started living there under an assumed name. And ultimately died a broken man in 1900. Now, these are the bare facts. First thing, that when we read between the lines, we will understand, is that Oscar Wilde wrote in a very, very decadent age. The naughty 90s or fin de siècle. You have to look these things up and know them for what they really are. Now, just look at England or the United Kingdom of that day. England was at the center, the mother country of a worldwide empire. The urban rich had money to burn almost. They could rise late, then eat, drink, and be merry, smoke cigarette after cigarette, often opium-tainted cigarettes, could drink the choicest wine and liquor. They could go to the opera without giving much thought to the earning of money. They're really very dandified. You have to understand this. So the kind of life that Oscar Wilde depicts is the urban upper and upper middle class English society of the 1890s. Now, we have to situate Oscar Wilde. What kind of a writer he was greatly influenced by the heritage that he had. You remember, I have already told you about Hippolyte Taine's precept that, every writer is the product of the race, the milieu, and the moment. So, Oscar Wilde wrote as a direct response to the kind of pressures and influences that were brought to bear upon him. We all know that always there have been two contradictory sets of values, two contradictory sets of opinions regarding the purpose of literature. What is the purpose of literature? Is it to please? Is it to instruct? Is it to instruct as well as to please? This has bothered artists, critics, thinkers, theorists, and also the Bolivali Janta, the reading public or the audience, the viewership. Now, there has always been a didactic strain in literature, that literature should have a message. In the 19th century, this was further bolstered by the utilitarian thinking of Jeremy Bentham and his ilk. Everything should have utility, some utility. Some utility. But this kind of an extremist view that everything should have some message, everything should have some purpose, something good to teach. Morality was actually ruling the roost. But such extremity is bound to produce a kind of a backlash. In France, the clarion call, l'art pour l'art, or in English, art for art's sake. This was the slogan of the aestheticism. You know, the kind of literary movement that Peter had patronized and Ruskin had enriched, often in spite of himself. Now, Oscar Wilde was a direct disciple of Peter. Now, there was two strands of the aesthetic thinking. First one was obviously art for art's sake. Then there was also an extreme manifestation, life for art's sake. So everybody was supposed to live life to the lees, to drink it to the dregs, and live very, very passionately, intensely, fully. Now, Oscar Wilde had embodied this both in his literary creation and in his personal life. Now, we will see that Oscar Wilde was a great storyteller because he was a very, very eminent classicist. He had at his disposal the treasure trove of the Greco-Roman literature and culture, which he could revisit from the perspective of late Victorian era. Now, so far as Wilde the dramatist is concerned, you have to understand one thing. You remember, in the 17th century, there was Milton, the writer of closet drama, like St. Earnest. There were if you remember, the Restoration comedies and the Restoration tragedies, which were written, produced, performed, loved or loathed in equal measure. In the 18th century also, we come across people like Sheridan or Goldsmith. You know that even though not so resplendent as before, for example, in the Jacobean or better still in the Elizabethan era, now there were at least writers, and they often turned out good quality plays as well. Okay. But you know, after Sheridan and Goldsmith, you will see that though the romantic poets tried to try their hands at writing plays, they were not that successful. Poetry's Unbound was there. We know about that. Later on, we will see that popular theatre, the works of Gilbert and Sullivan, for example, used to travesty both Wilde the person and Wilde the producer of literary texts, writers of literary texts. Okay. Importance of being earnest, considered to be Wilde's greatest gift to posterity. You will see that in the 19th century, even though Tennyson, someone like Tennyson would write Beckett, but at least one thing has to be very clear. that behind the veneer of harmless banter, Oscar Wilde has also brutally exposed the hypocrisies of human beings. So, we'll see that in the 19th century, before Wilde, and to some extent also before someone like your George Bernard Shaw, both were Irish, to remember this. English drama was not that important question as thought of earlier. Now, in this audio, I have discussed and situated Oscar Wilde vis-a-vis his works. So this much for the time being, and in my next presentation, I will talk about some other aspects of Wilde and of importance of being earnest. Thank you and good night.